Good morning. The Ranter is back to go into yet another rambling diatribe of the news of the day. And, uh, it's been a while since I did this. I was planning on doing one involving, finally the 15th time the charm vote that got Kevin McCarthy the speakership of the House and all that entails. But, little snafus here and there came about in real life, and, kind of put the kibosh on that idea. So I will briefly go into that, just saying that when all was said and done, and the whole high drama that we all were privy to for our entertainment, in the end, the results are still the same, is that, the House Republicans who have the majority, who have control over the House, are doing what I pretty much said that they were doing. They're going to play musical chairs with committee positions. They forced out Democrats from the positions they were in, and they started passing the bills that they want to pass, and then they self-congratulate themselves and vaunt their successes on Twitter. Not mentioning that it also requires anything that they pass to also go through the Senate and or be signed by the President, which means that is completely ineffectual. And given the paper-thin majority they actually have in controlling the House, even though they tout as the American people gave them the majority, a very, very small majority, in fact the smallest majority of a turnover in midterms in modern political history of the United States. They apparently, the House Republicans, assume that no one that they're trying to tout all these successes with has ever taken a civics class and know how our government actually functions. But that aside, while I say that the House Republicans is ineffectual when it comes to actually pushing out policies that they want to push out, they still have influence in terms of the budget. They still have influence in terms of putting investigations together, putting committees towards investigations. They set up situations where they create a committee to investigate the weaponization of the Department of Justice and the media. And I believe in this particular committee, they're also trying to look into actual active cases, criminal cases, and so forth that are being conducted. Geez, I wonder what person that they're going to be doing that for, to try to dismantle for the benefit of. But, that aside, yeah, as I said, as ineffectual as they are for policy, they can do that. They can also, put a monkey wrench on any budget issues and concerning that, say, the aid that we give to Ukraine. They can mess with that, and they can stall that. So, in the event this becomes a wash, where all we do is that we're either going to stagnate one way or we're going to stagnate the other way. So that's what's happening in the House. So, yay. But the story at hand that we have been starting to see through the media, even though people are claiming that the media was burying it, is the story concerning Joe Biden evidently been holding on to documentations, classified documentations, ever since he was vice president. And as something, when I first heard about this, as we spent the last year up to now tagging Donald Trump over him hoarding his documentations over this, that he's been keeping in Mar-a-Lago, in a den or in a box mixed in with magazine clippings. So, very serious places here. The same as Joe Biden keeping some of this stuff next to his Corvette. Anyway, if we're going to be critical on Trump, taking this as serious as humanly possible, the documentations that he was carrying, that he was holding, which was top secret and classified in various shades and levels of it, where we scoff at his claims of he declassified it in his mind. He's Professor Trump of the Trump men, and he could just declassify it. No, a reminder on that little point. Yeah, presidents can declassify. They have to tell people what is being declassified. Let them know what they are so that they can log it, saying that this stuff was declassified by the president. Not just keep papers and just say to themselves, oh, I declassified it. However, as that said, that we've been spending the year on that, and how serious this is, Joe Biden does not get a pass simply because he's on the other side. If he's been holding on to documentation, then we need to investigate that as to wonder why he's holding on to it. That said, the differences between the two is that Trump hid the knowledge of them being documentation, ignored subpoenas, had his lawyers delay, cajole, and try to stave off anyone actually snatching this material, to the point of when the archives, the National Archive, who was wanting this stuff back, did all they could up to that point, finally got the FBI to go and knock on the door with a search warrant to claim this stuff, which wasn't necessary. They could have handed it over, but they didn't want to, because again, Professor Trump of the Trump men mentally made these things declassified. And after they go in to search it, then we got the stories of, oh, they planted the stuff. They planted the stuff, but I want it back. I want back the stuff that they planted. Yeah, that makes entirely a lot of sense to me. As it does to you, of course. Alright. Burying. But if we're critical of Trump on that, we'd be hypocrites not to be critical of Biden. But that does not mean that we ignore the circumstances and where the differences are between the two. Whereas, as I said, Trump was hiding and doing all the other bullshit and flailing. The Biden people found the stuff. The Biden people informed the archives that they discovered this stuff, and the Biden people gave it back. See, you have to acknowledge that there's a difference in that. There's a difference in approach in this. That's, again, reiterating, that does not mean that case closed, no investigation needed. No. This stuff was held on to for 6 years. A vice president really shouldn't really be having this stuff. Should he be able to look at this stuff at the time of him being vice president? Sure. I don't think he should be taking it home and keeping it. And this stuff, like concerning Ukraine, since Ukraine has been an issue since the Obama administration, into the Trump administration, to now the Biden administration, that has to be something to be considered, and we have to ask questions. So when Merrick Garland came out and said that they were putting a special counsel to investigate the matter of the Biden documents, I didn't hesitate to say, yeah, do that. Because again, we have to be fair about this. We do not want to be hypocrites on this, because if we're going to, get on Trump's case over this, and we don't do that towards Biden, then we devalue the point of why we are upset and why it is dramatic as to why Trump was holding on to this documentation. Because if we can't hold Biden to the same standard than Trump, then we're hypocrites. And all this is fucking politics. And that, we have to have the self-awareness. That said, as I once again reiterate, because I keep going in circles here. We have to acknowledge the differences between the two as much as we need to acknowledge the similarities of these situations. Now, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go through what is so far considered the timeline of this material being held by Biden and when the Biden people discovered this and sent it to the archives, okay? So, this is from Reuters, entitled What We Know About the Biden Documents, a Timeline. This starts from January 12th, yesterday. Here is a timeline of what has been disclosed about the classified documents that ended up in the temporary office used by President Joe Biden and at his home in Wilmington, Delaware. 2017. Biden begins working periodically at the Penn Biden Center, a nonprofit think tank in Washington run by the University of Pennsylvania. Biden attorneys discover a small number of records inside the office at the think tank. They informed the U.S. National Archives of their discovery, turned over the materials, and began cooperating with the archives and the Justice Department. November 9th, 2022. The FBI begins an investigation to determine whether classified information was mishandled or whether any federal laws were broken. November 14, 2022. The U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland assigned John Loesch, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, to investigate and ask him to determine whether a special counsel is warranted. December 20th, 2022. Biden's personal counsel informs the Department of Justice that additional documentation with classified markings were found in the president's private library attached to his garage at his home in Wilmington, next to the Corvette. January 5th, 2023. Loesch briefs Garland on the investigation and recommends the appointment of a special counsel. January 9th, 2023. The White House discloses publicly that it has discovered classified documents at Biden's temporary office at the University of Pennsylvania and says it is cooperating with investigators. January 12th, 2023. Yesterday. Biden's personal counsel informs the Justice Department that a document with classified markings was discovered in the president's home in Wilmington, Delaware. Garland appoints Robert Hugh, the former Trump-era U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland, as special counsel. All right. So there's the timeline of where this stuff is gone. Now, with all the preambles that I said about this, what strikes me is the lack of self-awareness of people who are like on Twitter or the House Republicans who are all just like making noise about this. You know, we just investigate, impeach him, impeach the world. First of all, you're going to impeach Biden anyway. You're just needing reasons and excuses. And at that point, once again, another one of the powers that the House Republicans do have is not only their investigation powers, which they're going to use because, you know, inflation, what's that? But they're also wanting to impeach Biden. Hell, Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted to impeach Biden as soon as he became president. And all for the same reason. The vengeance. To wreak revenge for them, for the Democrats to dare and impeach the great saintly and wonderful child Jesus that is Donald Trump. Twice. And they can impeach Biden. They absolutely can impeach Biden. Whatever they're going to assume, whatever he's done is high crimes and misdemeanors, yeah, sure, they can impeach him. But as it happened with Trump, you need 2/3 of the Senate to convict and remove. And they're not going to get that. That is not happening. And what is being presented here if they're going to use this as a means of doing so, ain't enough to win over Democrats who have the majority in the Senate, to climb onto the Republicans to give them a 2/3 vote. So one of my old statements of the House Republicans taking over holds true. All this is, it's political noise. That's all they can do. They can do political noise. They can spend the people's money doing investigations. Jim Jordan can sit there as the head of the committee with his jacket off, and they can do their sound bites. But in the end, it's not going to amount to anything. And I would be surprised that the investigations that go into Biden documentation from the Department of Justice would go anywhere either, and not because of the conspiracy theory notion that the Department of Justice and the media is in a tank for Biden on this, but you do have to, again, acknowledge the differences between the situations between Trump and the documentation that he's been holding, and how he responded and reacted to it, and the Biden administration, who has been forthcoming when their discovery of this, and immediately handing it over to the archives. They themselves are doing it. It wasn't, a sting operation. Biden wasn't caught with anything. They found it. They let them know. They gave it back. Should there be an investigation on this? Yes. Wholeheartedly, without a doubt, without hesitation. This stuff has been held by Biden for 6 years. We should investigate what this stuff actually is. And if we're not privy to what it is because it's classified material, then at least inform us what it is in referring to. You don't have to tell us the details of what any of this stuff is. If it's like something that could involve people's lives, yeah, don't tell us shit about that. But say, how important of the matter is that this is classified material and what it's pertaining to. But again, I don't know how much of this is going to be made of it other than it being hay and being noise, because even Fox News, at least once or twice, from various people, obviously not Hannity and not Tucker Carlson, but people like Karl Rove and others, pretty much debunk the seriousness of this, debunk the compare and contrast of this between this and Trump, and make it clear that what Trump did and how he handled what he did in terms of his own issue with documentation that he was carrying and holding at Mar-a-Lago is different than what is being done with Biden and what Biden did. So we can be adults, we can be fair and say that yes, Biden should get investigated for this. Why was he holding this stuff? Did he forget? That could be an excuse. That could be an explanation. But holding on to this for years, stuff that the archives apparently didn't even know he had, which is an interesting thing in of itself to investigate. These are questions that are worthy to be asked and worthy to get answers for. And if there is something that is also criminal involved in this, as it is with Trump's, pursue it. I think we need to get to the point to remember what we're supposed to be as the United States. Where this partisan bullshit of us on one side and others on the other side, where if our side does something that is bad, we have to compare and contrast it to the other side. And then somehow, because of that, wash us of any responsibility on our side because they did worse over there. I've been hearing that constantly. I mean, you see it on Twitter, you see it on social media, you see it in my group in Middle America, where people was like, oh yeah, well, Trump declassified it. He declassified it. Biden couldn't declassify it. He was a vice president. First of all, I didn't hear any of this of Biden ever saying that the stuff that he was holding, he declassified. So where is that even happening? Where did that notion come from, other than people defending Trump, saying that, well, he declassified his information, Biden can't? Biden never said he did. I actually had an argument with somebody on Twitter, and, you know, I don't really want to get into Twitter fights, because after a while I just tune them out and I just go, okay then. I just sort of wander away and let them continue to chatter as if I'm hanging on to their every word, because as if I did not have a life and work and other things going on, and look, there's sunlight. But I actually kind of nailed this guy, whereas, like, you said that, you said in your assertion that Biden claimed that he declassified things. Where's your source? Cite it. And he pretty much said his source was himself. Without irony, just claimed that he just pulled this shit right out of his ass. As where shit comes from. But, that is your... That's almost a statement of the American body politic of 2023. If you can imagine it, then you can argue it. Facts, cited sources, figures, statistics. What are they? Why do we bother with them? We don't have to. We just need to say it. We just need to say it, especially on social media. We need to say it, and then someone else can bob their head and agree. And then he can say it, and then rub a little stank on it, and then put a little spin on it on his or her own, so that the next person that sees it bobs their head on it, and then add their 2 cents to the story, which came from somebody's imagination, as opposed to it actually being factual. So, because why bother with facts? Why bother in going into something where you could be wrong, and you would have to acknowledge being wrong? Instead, let's just say anything convincing enough that some other person will go, I agree with what he says, so therefore that has to be the truth. So I will say what he said, but I will add to it and elaborate, embroider it. See, this gets frustrating about politics. It gets frustrating with politics, then gets frustrating with political news media, that we get too many segments of news where, of course, we're worrying about ratings instead of actually, you know, providing you with sourced material for you to decide for yourself the facts of the news that is being presented to you. No. We have to have more segments where we have, you know, the news that we provide, and then we have the analyst to give you their opinions, and then they run with that opinions as if that opinion perhaps could be actually fact. I said that in a previous video where you can take Fox News or OAN and MSN or CNN, and you can give them both the same piece of news, and they'll read out word for word the same type of news here, but then they get their analyst on to put their spin on it on the left side for MSN and CNN, or the right for Fox or OAN, or whatever, Christian Mingle, whatever the fuck. And you have here, you know, the news that is palatable to their viewership. Spin just the right way to the left, to the right, so that you can feel better that you personally, who have a political leaning one way or the other way, can feel better about yourselves, so that the facts are being presented to you in a palatable, digestible way that is spun to perfection for your entertainment, for your consumption. Remember when facts were just facts? You when the nightly news was the nightly news, they just told you what happened, and they don't tell you, they don't interpret it for you. You didn't need podcasts to go and take the news that's already presented and then give you their opinion on it or interpret it in ways for they think for you to understand. I mean, I don't think I do much in that direction, because all I am doing is pretty much ranting, and I appreciate and I cherish those few people who actually listen to me, ramble on incoherently. But I don't know. If we were anywhere close to the country that we had our ideals of, where our romanticized idealism of the United States, the stuff that was happening with Trump and what's happening with Biden, that would all be, we would nip that shit in the bud and say, we as the United States, as Democrats and Republicans, all together in our grand debates and our compromises, we are not this. We should be better than this. We want our leaders to excel to excellence, not reach for mediocrity or competency, as if that is a top shelf where the cookie jar is. That is not the case. We saw that in the midterms. That is not the case. The top shelf is competency and mediocrity, as opposed to excellence. No wonder the term elite, when it comes to politics or social circles, somehow has become a bad word. To be the elite, to excel. Because the political machine, be it left or right, who wants to cater to everybody, seem to have a problem with wanting to produce candidates for Congress or Senate or even presidents with that vein of excellence. You look at the credentials of our presidents from the beginning. Start with Washington, start with Adams, start with Jefferson, go down the line. You look at all the accomplishments, the accolades, be it military, be it education, be it law, be it a jack of all trades for Jefferson, who was like a Renaissance man. Then you think of what we push out now. The mediocrity and basic competency seems to be what we strive for. And it's like almost qualifications be damned, to the point where even in certain states, judges are appointed and celebrated who never tried a court case as a lawyer, but somehow get a judgeship. How is that remotely possible? It is in a 2023 world. I can't explain it. Maybe you can explain it. I don't know. In any event, this is it for now. To put a little bow at the end of this. Biden had documents. He shouldn't have had documents. There should be an investigation on it. I agree with them being assigned a special counsel towards it. If this leads to something criminal, pursue it, investigate it. There has to be some accountability anywhere. Anywhere. But if not, then that's just the way we are going in our country now. And that's pretty disappointing. However, the circumstances are different between Biden and Trump. And you gotta kind of be considering that if nothing happens to Trump, then nothing should happen to Biden on this. And those people who go on Twitter or go on the social medias, either Republicans on Twitter, be it politicians or just those who are, on the bandwagon, saying this is more egregious, that this is worse than whatever Trump is doing, or thinks that Biden should be impeached or imprisoned over this. If Biden should be impeached and or jailed, imprisoned for this, Trump should be imprisoned for his actions, for the multitude more documentation that he took and kept. And despite your claims of, he just declassified, didn't go through the process of what that actually meant, because you can't just Professor X the concept of declassifying, and that's that. You have to tell people so they know, so they can checkmark that off. But, whatever. Ranter rants, because y'all give me shit to rant about. I could be sitting here in just living a life of reading comic books and wasting my middle-agedness. But no, you give me this, world. Thanks. I will see you later.